Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to our coverage of the Formula A podcast. Now, remember, if you are a Sky Glass or a Sky Q customer, you can press the red button on your remote. But now, let's bring it into Ryan, Marcus, and Kyle. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome to Formula A, guys, and thank you very much, David Croft, for that guest appearance there, or our Wish.com David Croft. That's another episode of the Formula A podcast, and this is an exciting one. It's the Miami GP preview. We've got a lot to talk about, so strap in.
I think the first thing everyone's going to expect us to talk about is the Monaco Harbor from Wish.
Oh my god, yes. Speaking of Wish.com, I mean, Ryan, you saw the Monaco Harbor, I guess, right? The faux Monaco Harbor?
Yes.
Yes, it's unbelievable. The fake water and all, the boats.
It's a little, how would I word this? Painful to see almost. They definitely sold out and made it all about the marketing and all about the appearance on that harbor.
Well, I think a lot of it too was the original plan for the Miami GP was to be by the water and by the harbor, but I guess that got denied. So they still wanted to bring in that aspect of it to the course design rather than it just be like a parking lot, like basically what's it called, like a parking lot bash on steroids.
Yeah, I mean, there was one, like, I think the initial, like, proposal was literally, like, a square with a giant, like, arm sticking out of it that was, like, a double straightaway with a tight hairpin at the end, and it, like, drives across, like, a huge body of water, and it looked ridiculous. So I think
that layout did look pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, I think I'd take a slightly better layout with a fake harbor over a really bad layout with a real harbor.
Yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, let's be honest. Like, when we're watching the race, nobody's going to be paying that much attention to the water or the fake water and everything. Everyone's going to be hopefully paying attention to the on-track action if we get some of that, which do we think the layout's going to call for some nice overtake opportunities, or is it going to be like just another Monaco kind of qualifying determines the grid? What do we think?
Ooh, I do think, I mean, there's 3 DRS zones, so you would like to think that we should get some overtaking. Long straightaways, which seems to be the theme of a Herman Tilke designed track. I think this is a Tilke designed track. He seems to do all of them nowadays. Long straightaways, but it's really narrow, I saw. That's what I see, like, the Monaco comparisons coming in. Like, some of it's really narrow. There's a back section, I think up to the second DRS zone, where there's, like, a tight little chicane before they, like, blast onto the back straightaway. It's so narrow through there. There's going to be crashes for sure. It's interesting. It's interesting.
Now, do you think we're going to see red flags or just a bunch of safety cars this weekend?
Ooh, I mean, I don't know, Ryan. What do you think about that one? Like, that's you think 2
over the entire weekend? I'm calling 2 red flags.
Red flags.
That's going to be a red flag prediction from Ryan.
Okay,
it's extremely single file through that area that you're talking about, and a lot of these drivers have the tracks they go to very memorized, and obviously no one's going to have this memorized besides what they have been given on the sim. So if you get excited, you're coming into this hairpin and you forget for a slight second how single file it is. Yeah, it can spell disaster.
Yeah,
hopefully
totally
not.
agree.
I hope my prediction's wrong, but that's going to be my prediction. 2 red flags for over the weekend. That includes practices and everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, after Imola, we had 5 in qualifying alone. I think 2 over the span of a whole weekend wouldn't be such a bad thing.
And they're predicting rain on Sunday.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
I did not see that.
Yeah.
I did not see that.
Yeah.
So that might be like, because it's fresh track surface, plus you add the wet weather. I think it could be, it could turn into more of a drift event than anything.
Yeah, I mean, the first, like, I'm just looking at the track map here. The first, like, section of that Miami track, too, it looks really reminiscent of Interlagos, the first few corners there, and that can get really greasy in the rain in Brazil. So we could have the same kind of effect. At least in Brazil, there's runoffs. Here, it's pretty darn tight. So it's going to be interesting. That I don't really know what to say there. I do think there's going to be at least 1. I might double down on your prediction of 2, Ryan. That seems like a pretty fair assessment of things just based on the layout. But yeah, it's going to be weird. I mean, if you look at this kind of track, I mean, we look at guys who do really well at certain tracks for the first times in their career when they're visiting them. There's one guy that stands out who always seems to do really well on a new track.
Latifi.
Maybe not what I was thinking of, but starts with an L. It's Lewis. I mean, look at just the recent track record. First time Mugello, win. First time at Portimao, win. First time at Jeddah, win. I mean, it could be a race where Lewis and Merck maybe turn around
too.
Yes, Qatar as well. Yeah, so he's got a pretty darn good track record of showing up to new tracks and just whooping everybody. But obviously, you need the car for it.
Is Mercedes bringing any upgrades to Miami, or are they still figuring that out? Because I think Ferrari was saying they are doing some engine upgrade, which I didn't think was allowed. Right? Isn't the regulations kind of?
I don't know if it was a huge. I think they were talking about some minor upgrades on the Ferrari. I think they said like their big daddy upgrade package won't really be ready yet, but they'll make minor adjustments to it. Mercedes, on the other hand, I think I did read something about them changing the ride height of the car for Miami, because they're just doing everything they can to change the porpoising. I think they're standing in front of a huge whiteboard every day and coming up with different ideas. But I think they were looking at the ride height was their big adjustment for this weekend. So,
well, on the topic of porpoising, I did read an article earlier this week where they were comparing the Red Bull and the Ferrari floors versus the rest of the field. And it looks like on the Ferrari almost there's like this curved, almost a titanium piece that constantly drags on the floor. And they were analyzing the Red Bull one as well, and there's more titanium that's a part of the floor, so that it's when it is being pushed down, that titanium's basically holding the back of the car up a bit, so air's still getting through, and that's why we're not seeing the Red Bull porpoise at all. And they were almost comparing it to like an adaptive suspension as well, because they're saying there's something in that Red Bull's rear suspension where it, at a certain speed, it just hugs the floor and stays at a perfect height.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was really cool, actually. I think it was the Driver 61, that's Scott Mansell's website there. It was a really interesting comparison.
Nice. That's Marcus's
I will do
corner.
I will do my best to re-find it, but I did watch a video. I want to say it was in the last time we had ground effects was early 90s, correct? I can't remember now off the top of my head.
Sounds about right.
But anyway, the last... What's that, sorry?
It sounds about right, yeah. I think around that era.
Yeah, so the last time they had ground effects, there were teams that were putting rubber strips that hung off the inside of the tunnels on the floors of the cars. And on the bottom of it would be a strip of metal or wood, and it would compress like almost like suspension and keep the floor sealed. And it sounds like Ferrari and Red Bull are doing something extremely similar, but a little more modern with titanium. So I'll try and find it, and I'll try and find two pictures and compare them and see if they're similar. Maybe we could throw the graphic up on our Instagram and the comparison. And I'm thinking it's something like that, and maybe Mercedes needs to get on that if that's the case.
Yeah. So keep an eye on the Instagram for that one, because that is something that is very interesting. That definitely needs to be looked at. And speaking of setups and different changes, I mean, it's a weird track because there are a lot of long, fast sections. There's also a lot of tight technical corners too. I mean, if you guys were, an engineer or technical director, are you looking at a low drag setup? Are you looking at a high downforce? Or something, I guess it'd be something in between. This is like,
Honestly, I think if you can nail qualifying, like you're going to want that straight line speed, because I think the corners are tight enough that if you build, I don't think there's going to be a decent overtaking opportunity in those corners. I think maybe that heavy braking zone after the, that kind of the double straight.
Yeah.
I think that's where we might see some late braking, but I don't think we're going to see anything in the corners. It looks like the corners are flowy enough, and then you have such a long straight that you're going to want to prioritize the straight line speed.
Yeah, and it seems like a track where, if you can get that speed and nail a high qualifying position, sacrifice a bit of your cornering, I'm thinking that it's, you might have guys catching up to you through those technical corners, but as soon as you get on the straightaway, different story. You might blow them away, and that might be the advantage that teams are looking to get. It's gonna be an interesting one for the engineers, I think.
Yeah, and that's interesting you put it that way, because that's kind of what Red Bull did with Saudi Arabia this year. They were on the back foot to Ferrari in the corners, but as soon as Max did get by, he could stay ahead because he had just that little bit more of straight line with the more opened up wings on the straightaways.
Yeah.
Now, I think we touched on this on our Imola review podcast that, this track does have a little bit of everything. There's some really tight sections. There's some medium level corners with that are going to be near flat out. There's going to be flat out corners, and there's big straightaways. So, yeah, if I was the setup engineer, I would not want to be one for this race, because good luck to all of those guys.
Yes. It's going to be tricky, and thank goodness it's not a sprint weekend, because these guys need all the practice they can get, especially at a new track like that, because it's relatively flat. There's not really any elevation change that I can think of except for the back section. I know there's a bit of an elevation change going into that little chicane there, which I watched the track designer actually label it as a mistake generator. So they're almost, I think they're trying to look for guys to just slip up or create some sort of faux action, I guess, to go with the faux harbor. But it's going to be a lot these guys have to look at through the practice sessions. But it keeps it interesting for the fans, because you know what, like, super hard to make predictions. I mean, I'm sure we've all got our our sights set on one guy or one team that might come out of this looking pretty good, but it's tricky. You don't really have any sample size to go off of. We don't really know what to expect. I know most of the drivers have been saying, though, in the sim that it's a really fun track to drive. Whether or not that will be the same for the race is, we'll have to see, but it's encouraging.
Yeah.
It's encouraging. So, yeah.
Well, going back to sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
Does anyone else get a little bit of Sochi vibes from this layout?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
Putting a car park.
Yeah, the car park. Yeah, or shouts out to the old Caesar's Palace track from the old Las Vegas Grand Prix. It's maybe not be as glamorous as this one, but same kind of effect.
Actually, that's a race I'm excited for, is Las Vegas next year.
I think that's
going to be really cool.
That's a bucket list. That is going to be...
Maybe Formula A goes to Vegas?
I think we might have to do a live episode for that one next year.
I think so.
Yeah, on site. Oh, man.
That would be cool.
Well, you can see the expansion. It's pretty clear. They want that American market. They want that USD. It's going to be 3 races in the States next year. I mean... Are you guys happy to see the growth in the States? Do you think it's good for the sport? What do you guys think about that?
Kind of sucks for merch. Merch is really expensive now.
It is really expensive.
It's so expensive.
It is really expensive.
A t-shirt's $67. A polo's $105. Wish.com's looking a lot better right now.
I think you can thank Netflix just as much as the U.S. fan base for that. Formula One as a stonk has just skyrocketed with all the new fans from Drive to Survive, and I'm not criticizing it. It's one of the best things that's ever happened.
100%.
It's not the best thing that's ever happened for the sport as far as fan base goes.
Yeah.
Well, and like going back to everyone wanting to be in Formula One now because of all the hype, like there was that news that with the 2026 regulation changes, I think it was Porsche and Audi are looking to get in.
Yes. That was huge.
Yes, they are.
And an excellent segue, Marcus. That was perfect. And because that's a huge topic. I mean, it's been a rumor for like months and months and months now, probably in years actually. But we know they've been sitting in on board of director meetings, and we know the VW CEO finally did give the green light and say, they're full steam ahead. 2026, they're going to be there. The path that they're going to take is another question. Like, there's still a lot that has to be confirmed, and it's still kind of up in the air. I mean, Ryan, I'm sure we all know, from the Red Bull side of things, Porsche's looking for that engine deal with Red Bull. I'm assuming in AlphaTauri as well. What do you guys think about them jumping into a partnership with Red Bull there? That would be huge.
Yeah.
So I did quite a bit of reading on this whole Porsche and Audi introduction. coming back into F1, and nothing is actually officially set in stone as of yet. The announcements were looking to be made at the Austrian Grand Prix, roughly. So, and what's kind of sketched out right now is that Porsche will be a co-engine supplier with Red Bull powertrains for 2026, and Audi is talking with, you two might be excited or terrified for this, but talking with McLaren.
Terrified.
And getting on board with McLaren.
Yeah, Porsche McLaren
I'll be
would
honest,
cool.
I was kind of bummed out when I heard they were coming to F1. I was hoping for a full-blown Volkswagen Group, brand new team, brand new facility, 2 more cars on the grid, 2 new drivers.
I could see
you
that, to
can't
be
tell me
honest
they
with you,
don't-
now that F1's big enough. I feel like we might see like a 22 driver grid. Like I think we touched on
we
it
have
last
to.
podcast when
Yeah.
we were talking about the Piastri thing and how like we believe that the F2 champion should get an automatic seat in F1.
Yeah. And there's just too much talent out there nowadays. You know, there's so many more drivers coming through the ranks now. They need those couple extra seats to just be huge, right? And it goes to the Piastri thing, and there's so many other young guys that deserve to get that shot. I mean, I would have loved to see a Volkswagen factory team as well, like the 11th team. I understand it's a lot easier for them to jump in as an engine supplier because all the resources are already there with the team, and we know that Audi, you know, their path doesn't sound like as set in stone as Porsche does. They are looking for like a full team buyout, and that's, you know, hinting towards the McLaren thing. I'd heard it was in the neighborhood of, you know, 500 million pounds as Ryan is flashing his Andretti Autosport t-shirt at me. They're looking at the neighborhood of 500 million pounds, but they want a whole McLaren buyout, and McLaren seems to have no interest in that. But the other teams that apparently they've been talking to, and I agree, I totally think that Audi should, you know, try and set something up with Andretti if they want their own team.
Yes. Bring them in.
I would totally agree with that. Before we get to that, though, the other 2 teams that I did hear them talking about maybe buying out, 3 actually, Williams, Alfa Romeo, and even Aston Martin has been floated around out there. I don't know if that's because old Lawrence is just so distraught right now with the performance. I don't know if I could see that happening, but if I was running that show, I would totally jump on that Andretti train. Yeah, like Ryan, that's all you, man. I mean, what would you think about an Audi and Andretti team? I think it'd be sweet.
And like Marcus was just talking about previously, that growing American fan base. If you had a real dear, near to heart American Mario Andretti, like that name on the F1 grid, like that would be huge. That would bring a huge, and that would be a good transition for Audi to get in, because it really looks like Porsche is going to lock in with Red Bull. But like you said, Audi wants to do their own thing as far as engines go, and Andretti wants in, and there's a massive cost saving for Andretti to get in. Andretti has facilities in the U.S. You know, Audi has facilities in Europe. You know, they've been part of Le Mans and Formula E and tons of big racing series. So I don't see why they couldn't and why they shouldn't. It's just all the finer details are with people way above my pay grade.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I know Andretti was super keen on the 2024 entry. I doubt that's going to happen now, unfortunately. I have no idea why they wouldn't want that 11th team on the grid. And they have it just seems like the perfect time to do it. But in 2026, maybe with the new engine rules, you know, coming into effect, maybe we might see that 11th team Andretti finally get his way in, because I understand them from the FIA's point, from a certain point of view, that they don't want another like HRT or Caterham or Marussia that just is, you know, never competitive through the whole history of the team. But it's Andretti Autosport. I mean, come on. These guys have raced all over the world. It's one of the most famous names in motorsport. I don't understand like why, especially wanting to get that US audience. I don't know why they wouldn't want to cash in on that, but like you said, it's above the pay grade. I have no idea why what goes on in these internal meetings or why they would turn that down, but I think that'd be a great idea. for Andretti if that was some sort of partnership with Audi. The only caveat I can think of is that apparently Alpine had been talking to Andretti as well, because Alpine were very keen on trying to get a second team on the grid because they have such a huge pool of young talent and they have nowhere to put them, right? So that's another thing to look at. So at least Andretti has options, but yeah, it's be exciting over the next little while. I'd like some more concrete details, but the prospect is there.
Well, actually, on the topic of all these young prospects, a seat that might actually be open is with Aston Martin. There's been lots and lots of talks about Vettel's contract expiring this year, and even he said, he goes, I might be retiring this year. Like he basically said the way or where the car is right now, he's got, like, unless there's some serious improvement that can happen, and unless he's in a competitive car, he doesn't see himself renewing his contract, which sucks, but it's could open the door for some new talent as well.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure, like, who would they even go after Aston Martin? I mean, Stroll brought Vettel in for the purpose of him being a world champion. He wanted that championship winning pedigree, right? And obviously, nothing against Vettel. I'm not putting this on Vettel at all, but nothing has worked out with that team. I'm just wondering if they would be interested in going for a younger guy, right? Or I'm not really sure who they would attract to that seat in the current state that they're in.
It almost seems like they have nothing to lose. Like, they may as well just bring in some young talent, roll the dice. I mean, like, they're clearly not fighting for world championships, so they may as well get someone in that seat, give someone the F1 experience, and hopefully it turns into something.
Yeah.
Yeah, like echoing what you said before, there's a ton of F2 talent. There's Oscar Piastri. Over in IndyCar, you have Pato O'Ward, who's made in his presses very evident that he is extremely interested in F1 and would love to jump the pond. Who's the other driver? Colton Herta wants to take a shot at F1, and they're good IndyCar drivers. And, like yourselves, you got the two of you, fantastic go-kart racers. It's, there's just not enough room. If you guys should be on the grid right there with the best, but it's the way it is. So, yeah, and I do agree. You can't just put teams, well, you can, but it's not ideal to just put teams on the grid for the sake of having more cars if they're not competitive, because then it's like F1.5 again.
Yeah. And Domenicali and Braun, they all say they're happy with the 10-team, 20-car structure right now, but it's not that difficult to add another team in there. I don't think so. I mean, obviously there's tons of stuff that goes into it, but I just reiterate my earlier statement that Andretti just seemed like something that would be a lock, you know what I mean? And they were the guys that had mentioned bringing Colton Herta over. So they already had a driver lined up too. They've got tons of sponsors.
And they have Grosjean if they want like an experienced F1 driver.
Yeah, Grosjean. Shouts out to Romain Grosjean, yeah. And our boy Pato O'Ward, our McLaren boy too. I did see he just won at Barber this past weekend for our McLaren IndyCar team. So big shout out to Pato, a guy that we could potentially see on the F1 grid sooner rather than later. Who knows? There's a lot of growth happening in the sport right now, and I'm not going to steal Marcus's thunder off the perfect segues, but speaking of growth, in all the news discussions we had heard on the topic of sprint races that we saw last weekend, they're looking to double the amount of sprint weekends next year. So it's, that's another thing that's, new to the sport that is still a little touch and go. Not everybody might be on board, but it can be exciting.
Well, we saw at Imola just how exciting sprint races can be.
Yeah. There's, an extra race basically for the price of admission. It's not the worst thing in the world.
I think it just messes with the the whole practice thing, because once you have first practice, then you go into qualifying. Now your car's stuck in Parc Fermé, right? So you can't even change the setup after FP2.
Yes.
So You know what I mean? It just kind of messes things up. Like,
It makes it harder on the teams. That's absolutely right. And the other thing is we have a budget cap now too. So, you know,
they're saying they get an extra X amount of money for doing the sprint races,
Yeah.
right?
yeah, which is okay. I just mean
Harder on the engines.
it's harder on the engines, yeah. And you know, you only get to use 3 engines a year, right? So there's obviously going to be more wear on them with, you know, being in race trim for an extra X amount of minutes or another hour or so.
That's
Yeah, no, go ahead, Ryan.
6 sprints is like the equivalent of 3 more full Grand Prix, right?
Yeah.
So it's a
I think
lot
they
of
should
wear
just
and tear.
make it so that you get
yeah.
4 powertrains next year instead of 3. I think that would be.
I know
Yeah.
a deal must have happened between F1 and the teams where they all liked it, because from what I read, the teams are happy to go ahead with 6, but it's now the FIA that is holding it up on confirmation and what's holding it up and why. So it could be money, it could be manpower, it could be maybe F1 threw the teams or they did throw the teams more cash. So now the FIA is standing there going, hey, well, if they're getting more money for more work, we want more money for more work. So
It's all
not
comes down to
official-
money. Yeah. Yeah.
not official yet, but it seems like it's very close. I could definitely see them coming to an agreement, and the 6 will go ahead.
I think they will do it. I mean,
Yeah.
they love it. Ross Sprint Braun, as I'm going to call him, his nickname, Sprint Braun. He is just like the champion of this thing. So I definitely think we'll see the 6 sprint weekends next year. I mean,
And they're saying one of them might be in Canada. So that
oh
could be
really?
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that might be a fun little drive out to Montreal. Maybe do another
Yeah.
F1 Formula A podcast over there.
Live on site. Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean,
On site.
that one would work. I think
I'm-
Montreal would work for a sprint weekend.
Yeah.
There's a lot of passing opportunities there, right? And it's a fast track, and it's one that guys look to make places very quickly. So
It's short and fast, which I think is a very key factor for a sprint race. So I do think Montreal is a really good pick.
yeah,
And also, I'm kind of a huge Ross Braun fanboy in the sense that I kind of trust almost anything he'll do after his career and his track record.
yeah,
So if he thinks 6 sprints are the way to do it, at least give it a try, because it's coming from Ross Braun.
I know. I don't want to challenge this guy either. I mean, you know, most successful or best winning percentage of all time belongs to Braun GP. 1 year, 1 championship. Can't go wrong. Can't beat that. No one's ever going to beat that. So I trust the guy too. I trust the process. So aside from let's say we got Montreal as a sprint weekend, are there any other tracks that you guys think would work really well for a sprint weekend? What do you guys think?
Oh, definitely Monaco. Definitely
Monaco, eh?
Well-
yeah. Guys standing up in the harbor trying to make an overtake.
Yeah.
Well, did we not ask each other to pick 6 races and we'd surprise each other on the podcast?
I think 3. I think that's fair.
Okay.
Oh,
I
didn't
think
do
3.
my
So I went
I think
ahead. I went ahead and picked 6 anyway.
Oh my god.
So
I might steal some off of you.
and
Let's hear it.
my 6 were
I hope he doesn't have one of mine.
Montreal was one of my picks.
Okay.
Keep Brazil.
Yep.
Keep Imola.
Mm-hmm.
Throw in Austria,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Singapore,
Ooh.
Ooh.
Oh. Hot
and
take.
last but not least, Japan.
Wow.
Okay.
Suzuka, eh? Okay. Interesting.
See, mine was gonna be obviously Canada and then Spa, and I couldn't think of a third.
Well, I will give you a third. This is a spicy take, guys. All right, I'm throwing it
Okay.
out there. Vegas. You know what? They are already doing the race on a Saturday night. It almost seems like they're steering into the direction of leaving the option out there for a sprint weekend to, you know, maybe have a sprint race in the morning, practice in the afternoon, practice 2, and then race at night, qualifying on the Friday. I think that
That would be a
I think
hectic
that would
Saturday
work.
for the drivers.
Oh, it would be hectic. I mean, I know they want to jump into Siege's Palace and go partying. I get it, but you've got all Sunday for that. That's the whole point of it. Race on Saturday, party on Sunday.
Your winnings on the Sunday.
Exactly. Put it all on the roulette table. I think that would be wicked. You've got that huge straightaway just ripping down the strip.
That's going to make for some really cool pictures, too.
Yeah, I think that would be perfect for a sprint weekend. So...
Yeah, that would be a good pick, yeah.
Yeah, so that was my spicy take. That's my spicy take for you guys. The other one, I think Qatar will be back on the calendar next year. That one could work. It's very similar to Bahrain, the layout wise. So I think that one could work. And yeah, I would Red Bull Ring. I gotta agree with you on that one.
I was surprised we didn't try sprint race at the Red Bull Ring last year, because we had 2 back-to-back races at the Red Bull Ring. Why not spice it up a little bit?
Yeah, I think that is on the calendar this year, I think, isn't it? Red
Bull Ring, yeah.
It is? Okay.
Twice or just once?
I want to say
just once. I think it's a sprint
in
weekend.
June. It's in June sometime, and that's when I'm doing air quotations. Yeah. Porsche and Red Bull are going to make their announcement. It's going to be at the Austrian Red Bull Ring.
I mean, if that Red Bull partnership is true, that would make perfect sense. Their home Grand Prix. That would be quite the weekend. Sprint weekend followed up by a big Porsche confirmation announcement with Red Bull. That would be pretty darn cool.
Mm-hmm. That would be cool.
Is there still a sprint at Silverstone this year? Or did they...
I think the other 2 this year, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, I do believe it's Red Bull Ring and Brazil. I have to double check that. We got to pull up our facts and our records here. Both of those are really, really good, though. So,
yeah, you were right. Red Bull Ring in July, actually.
In July, okay.
So it is July.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So it is July. Interesting. And then, Brazil obviously is fantastic. That track is just good at everything, I think. You can't go wrong with Interlagos.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll see a Lewis last to first again this year, but we know the sprint works and we know it's good for overtaking at that track. So it's going to be interesting, man. It really is. Ryan, I have to ask Suzuka. That's a tricky one. Yes,
it is.
So
it's not actually the longest track, even though it really looks and feels like it.
Yeah.
I did look at the length of it, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's not a super long track. And here's a really spicy take. I know they'd never go for this, but Suzuka has 1 million layouts.
Yeah.
So I would actually want the sprint to be ran on Suzuka short, either the east or west version of the circuit, because then you're getting a real sprint race.
Oh my goodness,
that would be pretty cool.
I guess it would have to be the east because they need the full size pit lane. But if they did that, like just through the S's in the front straightaway, that would be pretty awesome. I never thought about that. I mean, they use the Bahrain outer loop, so the option of using different layouts isn't out of the question, right? So.
Come on, Ross Braun, listen to this podcast.
Interesting take. Yeah, I like it. I like it. We've got some good ideas here. Wow.
I really like that idea.
That's impressive.
The different layouts.
Yeah. So.
Because imagine, I think it was 2020 where we had 2 Bahrain races, the secure and the regular.
Yeah.
Imagine the sprint race was like the outer, like the fast, like sub 1 minute lap times, and then that sets you up for the full. Because I think that'll switch it up.
That will be really cool,
right? Because then it makes it more exciting, and it's not like, we watched 20 laps of this exact same race yesterday.
Oh, this is a good idea, guys. Very good.
I'm all for kind of not wrecking, but I like it when the teams can't get as much data as they want. So they're going into Sunday a little bit blind because they only ran half the track in their sprint. They would still practice on the full, but I guess you qualify. Yeah, so I would do it: practice on the full, qualify on the full, throw an absolute, or it'd be 1 practice on the short east circuit, so it's not completely blind, and then you're racing on the full course on the Sunday. So data would be everywhere, and it really opens up the parameters to let other teams possibly jump spots.
I like it.
I would be in for that.
I like it. I like it, guys. I mean, it's change is good, I think. It's nice to try to spice things up a little bit and mix up the grid a little bit. And in terms of change too, another thing I did see for next year, I think they're going to trial, not at all the races. I think it's just 2 or 3 races that are trying to do it. They are basically telling you there's only one compound of tire you can use in Q1, Q2, and Q3.
Yeah.
So it's hard in Q1, medium in Q2, and soft in Q3, that's pretty interesting. I mean, they took away that tire rule for the top 10 of having to start on the same tire you qualify on. So obviously, I guess it kind of makes sense that, it saves the guys maybe some soft and some mediums for the race, some different options there. I think it's a good idea. Another good one. Another hit from our boy Ross Sprint Braun. And yeah, I think it'll be good for the budget cap too, right? If you can save a few sets of tires here and there for the smaller teams too. So it's another good idea. It's another good one. This is the episode of the good ideas, I think.
Yeah. I did have a good laugh because they try to play up that tire rule or proposal for qualifying as, look how sustainable and environmentally friendly we are. You're going to save 4 sets of tires a weekend.
Yes.
Ooh, you guys have planes and shipping containers and tankers and trucks traveling all around the world through this huge circus. Don't get me wrong, it's a step in the right direction, but don't try and give me that you're all about sustainability.
Yeah, they're trying to move. Yeah, I mean, that's how they got.
I mean, they've gone from V12s, V10s, V8s now to, little turbo engines. Yeah.
Crying.
I could tell Ryan's real
emoji.
excited about that.
Yeah.
Bring back the V10s.
I mean, hey, why does Red Bull still throw a V8 out in all their promo videos, right?
Yeah.
I mean, deep down, everybody kind of still wants those, but
I feel like I was reading up about it, like, they have to use a car that's a certain age. Like, they use the older car with the new livery.
Yeah.
But the car has to be X amount years old for it to do promo stuff.
Yeah.
Like, for it to be running. Like, they could have the shell, like just a roller.
Yeah.
But for the actual, like, drivability, it has to be X amount of years old.
Yeah.
That's why it's the old cars with the new liveries.
It's fair. And I don't think Horner and Marco really wanted Checo to be tearing up the Hard Rock Stadium in their new car too, so yeah. It's probably better they use the old scrap car. Yeah.
And since we're on good segues, I'm going to use this as a segue, as you just talked about Checo. Checo had a news headline come out this past week threatening to quit F1 if the calendar grows any more than its current state. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on that. So pretty much what he kind of laid down is anything over a 24 race weekend, there's no longer enough time for him to be home and with his family. And he would hang up the helmet and throw in the gloves, which I think is pretty crazy. I haven't heard of any other drivers backing him up or going against him, but Checo's kind of come into what I think is, since 2012, his best form. So it'd be a shame to see him go over something like that. What's your thoughts, guys?
Yeah, I'm kind of with him on that one. As a fan, I guess it's great to have racing, as much as you can, but these guys have lives too outside of F1, and it's not just the drivers; it's the teams and all the mechanics and everything too. They need a bit of a break, right? And the other thing, aside from the drivers and just having time away for their families and everything, is there's so many freight and shipping delays in since in the post-COVID sort of world, like it's just kind of like setting them up for disaster sometimes, I think, with like just triple headers and all that.
But it's also like the drivers need to have a life too, like anything. Like, you think about it, say we go to like a 25, 26 race calendar, that's a race every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, what are these guys going to do? Like, they don't have any time to relax, and we know, there's going to be like a winter break or whatever, but then you're going to have double headers, triple headers. Like, we keep forgetting that these guys are humans too. Like, they still have lives. Like, Lando was at a wedding this weekend. Like, you have to imagine that I think it was his brother's wedding this weekend, that they had to plan that around his F1 schedule. And if there's a race almost every weekend, like, it affects these guys' personal lives. Like, we saw Danny Rick couldn't see his family for like 2 years almost, or a year.
Yeah, it's
because
tough.
of all this stuff. Like, it's messed up. It shouldn't be. Like, it's great from a fan's perspective to have that many races, but there has to be some sort of balance.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much set in stone. It's going to be 24 races next year, I think, because, well, we're gaining Vegas. Qatar will be back on the calendar because, the only reason they're not there now is because they have the World Cup this year. So they'll be back next year. And it's like, there hasn't really been any announcement of anything leaving the calendar, so it's going to be a huge calendar next year. And
well, especially with the popularity that F1 has amassed now, nobody wants to give up their F1 race.
no,
Right? 'Cause
exactly.
It's great for tourism. It's great for just, they have all this B-roll of the country's footage. It's great for everything. It's amazing advertising. It now books you not just the F1 weekend for tourism, but people will say, oh, like, Turkey actually looks beautiful. We should go to Turkey.
Oh, exactly.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the biggest spectator sport in the world, right? So it goes far beyond just the race weekend, what they attract to all these different countries, right? And it's, you add all these races and it's like someone's got to make room, right? And, what worries me is that you could be losing some of these old historic tracks, Spa, Monza, Silverstone, that they're mainstays. They just have to be there, right? So it's tough. I think they do have to slow down just a little bit with adding races. And, on the topic of, they were reluctant to add new teams because they were worried that, they might not be competitive. Well, they seem very keen to just jump in and add new races whenever they want. They added Vietnam, and that never happened because the organizer ended up getting arrested. So they just pulled the plug on that. So they just have to be careful. They really got to be careful with this.
I think Vietnam, the track sits half finished, untouched.
Yeah, they'll never use it.
It is a shame. It is an absolute shame. And you know what? I will say, I watch other sports like IndyCar and Formula Drift and NFL and NHL. There's an excitement to when the season ends and the season comes back. And, if you have F1 where it almost never ends and never really restarts because it just goes on forever, it takes away from that excitement, that build-up, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you had Christmas once a month, then it wouldn't be so special. It's not really.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Right?
I love me Christmas presents.
I think we got to keep that sparkle to it. And 24 races, I think, is already almost too many.
Yeah.
And I think anything more would definitely be too many.
Yeah, totally agree.
Well, I think on that note, we keep it kind of short and sweet with the podcast, and then at least we can get some more stuff brewing for the post-race podcast. And unless there's anything else you guys wanted to add,
it's gonna be awesome. I mean, this is a new track, as we mentioned before. So if you have a prediction, race winner, bold prediction, anything like that, who do you guys think is gonna take the checkered?
I'm gonna say Sainz might take the checkered.
I'm doubling down on that. I'm calling. Yeah.
I think we're gonna see Sainz get his first race win.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Guess what one of my predictions was? Because I made 3.
Okay.
One of them was Carlos' luck turns around.
Yeah. No gravel traps. He's probably dancing.
Nope.
Yeah.
And then I also put Max Verstappen. I didn't put how closes the points to Charles Leclerc further.
Interesting. Very interesting.
And then I also put Mick Schumacher first points.
I'd like that.
Yeah.
I would enjoy that.
I think we're all in agreement on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think those are solid. Solid predictions.
Home race. I think Haas are going to show up. I think they're going to show up to play. K-Mag is. We all know what K-Mag brings to the table. He's going to be up there for sure. And I think
on fire this year.
Yeah, and I think Mick is just going to vibe off that presence of being in America and driving for an American team. I think Mick he's going to have a really good weekend. So.
Yeah, so we're going to see hopefully Carlos Sainz winning the race, Max closing the gap, and Mick in the points.
Yeah, so lock it in, guys. Bet365, score bet, whatever the heck you guys use. Signs for the win. Lock it in. You heard it here first.
And I'm feeling nervous because these two gentlemen right here, they did the first podcast without me, and they nailed the Aston Martin bet. So those are big shoes to fill and big follow-up to do. So I'm, the fact that you're trusting my predictions it's a lot of weight on my shoulders.
Man, I just work here.
Yeah.
And I did want to bring up one other thing, but I agree. Let's leave it for the post-race podcast. But the FIA, or not the FIA, F1 has come out with what they want to do with the cars for 2026.
Ooh.
6 points. Yeah.
That's going to be a good subject.
That's gonna be a good
that would
one.
be a good one.
But let's leave it on that. Leave a little dangler, a little clickbait for the next
there.
podcast.
Yeah, the carrot's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, it's been another good episode. Thanks for tuning into Formula A, everybody. Enjoy the Miami Grand Prix, and we will see you all next week. We're out.